Everyone, we'd like to begin in just a couple minutes. If you could take your seats, that would be great. Just like to begin in about a minute. Please take your seats, find a great seat, get some food. Thank you. Sarah. Okay, we're going to get started so we can be on time. I would like to welcome everyone to. Okay, I'm hearing an echo. I'll try again. This is our 66th annual meeting for the Benton Soil and Water Conservation District. And I just want to welcome everyone. The last time we had our annual meeting in person was January of 2020. So we are just really, really excited to have everyone gathered in person. We did 21 and 22 through Zoom, and we also are, there are some people Zooming in tonight as well. But thanks everyone for coming. I do want to mention that if you haven't seen the Betty LeDuc exhibit that's across the hall, it was supposed to leave yesterday and it's staying for a little bit longer. It's a wonderful exhibit. She's a really amazing artist. So feel free to poke your head in there before the end of the meeting. Oh, and it's not advancing. Okay. So we've got a really great program tonight, and Sarah is actually going to introduce our keynote speaker, Joe Scott, later, but I just really want to say a special welcome to Scott for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have you. I have a few housekeeping notes. The restrooms are located out this door to the back and to the right. The museum staff would like us to stay on the first floor of the museum. You know, feel free to wander around on the first floor. The fire exit is right through this door. I don't anticipate we're going to have to leave in a hurry for any reason, but if we did, you would go out this door and then make a left and go through the gate out onto the street. And if you haven't picked up our annual report in the back, please do so. There's a stack of them back there. They're hot off the press. So this just gives you a sense of our agenda tonight. And we've got until 8 o'clock, and we're going to try to stay on time. So I just wanted to mention really quickly that in 2022, our staff and board, with lots of different conservation partners giving input, we updated our 5-year strategic plan. So if you want to learn more about that plan and what the strategic themes were and our new goals, you can check out our website. You can also give me a call, but on the last slide tonight, you'll see our website and how to contact us. And I want to give a heartfelt thanks to our staff. You'll hear a lot more about the district's programs and individual staff projects during Michael and Sarah's presentations. But we had a great year of conservation in Benton County, thanks to our wonderful staff. Many of you know our staff. We have a couple new staff, but Donna Schmitz, you probably know. Donna's been with the district for 23 years as our resource conservationist. And Teresa Madison, who I know a lot of you know, another resource conservationist, and she's going to be celebrating her 19th year in February. I just passed my 10-year mark, which just amazes me, in January. And then Michael R. joined us in April of 2021. And we have two really new staff members, Sarah Roberts, our communications staff person, and she joined the district in August of 22. And then Candace Mackey, our operations coordinator, and she's been with us a couple months. So thanks to staff for all the great work that you do. So I am going to introduce Nate Johnson, who is our board chair, and he's going to say a few things about the board. And come on up, Nate. Thanks. I don't know why is that on? Hide the phone.
I want to thank Holly, and I want to thank everyone who's here. Adjustments. Make sure it all works. Okay. All right. Howdy. I'm Nate Johnson, and I'm a recently elected director, and I'm also the board chair. I want to welcome you all to the annual meeting of what they used to say, the annual meeting of landowners. And we've had some conversations about this, and I think it's landed on, it's the annual meeting of land lovers. So you're all here, glad to see you. And I want to take a minute here and just introduce the different directors that are on the board. And you can see the names on the list. If your name is on this list and you're here, please stand up so people know who you are. And I won't draw out specifics from you, but just raise your hand or stand up and let people know who the directors are. Thank you. And situation on the board is that there's been quite a bit of turnover happening. So we've had some people who've been serving for a long time. I'll be talking about some of those folks who are going to be departing from the board a little bit later. But we also have some new folks who've kind of consistently been pulling in the last couple of years. And along with a lot of new members on the staff, it's kind of an interesting turning over of leaves that's been happening here. And it's pretty encouraging and surprising to see many people are coming with a lot of different talents and a lot of backgrounds and a lot of really interesting abilities and insights. And I found it to be a really rewarding and rich experience to be a part of the board and to work with everyone who does this work every year. And if you're interested at all in coming into the board, or you'd like to know more about it, you can talk to me after the meeting, or any of us who are directors. But it's a really valuable network of folks that you get tapped into, and you get to see a lot of people who are putting a lot of their life's energy into trying to make this place a better one, and trying to hold on to what's good about this place that we love for the people who are coming after us, a lot of whom haven't even been born yet. And so it's an honor to serve with everyone that I'm on the board with, and really appreciate all of the interest for those of you who are coming to this annual meeting to hear about what we're up to. Okay, and I want to say also thanks to Joseph Scott for coming and presenting for us. It's an honor to have you here. And with that, I think Sarah's going to do some introductions.
Oh, some info about joining our board. Okay, well, thank you. And I'm a shorty, so you're going to have to do this too. We have multiple scales today. Okay. So I'm the fairly new communications and engagement coordinator at SWCD. And I just hate podiums. That's okay. And so if you're getting an email from us, chances are it's probably coming from me. So my door and my email is always open for anyone having questions about what we do or needing support, that's what I'm here for. But it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote, Joe Scott. We're really happy to have him here tonight. So Joe is a member of the Confederated tribe of Siletz Indians. He's the son of Lorna Avery Scott and Robert A. Scott, and his ancestors include the Takelma people of the Upper Rogue River Valley. Joe is a traditional dancer, singer, and artisan, and he's recognized as a language and culture bearer by the Siletz tribe. He is dedicated to preserving and promoting traditional Indigenous ways of knowing. Joe has spent his life in Oregon, learning and teaching traditional values of place, self, and spirit. Joe has a Master's of Science in Education Curriculum Instruction from Portland State University. And after nearly 20 years of teaching tribal history, language, culture, and values on the Siletz Reservation, he has continued to share his education and experience in tribal education with Indigenous communities locally, across the country, and abroad. So we'll give a very heartfelt and thankful welcome to Joe. Need to plug you in. Okay. It's up to you. That's true. Fancy. We didn't tell you at the creep factor. So you should just be able to do arrows or something.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Scott, yeah, Confederated. Definitely. The settler inside of my who, as many of you know, the founder of the and actually a number of here. It's also worth noting that he had a relationship with here that involved their continuing to camp and do their seasonal rounds in spite of the intense changes going on. So. I knew that was going to be a thing. All right, so do I have to repeat all that? Where? This thing? Okay. Well, I was super uncomfortable with this. All right. So yeah, I love this picture right there. The majority of my work right now in traditional ecology and Indigenous ecological science is in fire, is in cultural fire. So that's really kind of the angle I'm coming at traditional ecological knowledge right now, is through my interest in and training in and my connection to the element of fire and my work with fire. So this picture is great. This is right across, it's by Fern Ridge Reservoir, and there's a place where youth went across from the high school and fire to the field there, and it probably burned up and come 5 years later, you know, there's a bowl of and all poisoned out. Look at it now, what you see is off in the distance, beautiful meadow. There's fresh water there, there's purple heritage oak tree that is like all of a sudden producing acorns. And it's really good reflection of how this element that a lot of us perceive as bad isn't really bad, it's raised down from, you know, fire's bad, and fire. And in spite of all those lessons that fire reveals beautiful things, and the land itself depends on fire as an element, just as it depends water, air, all the big things itself. So, you know, vilifying one of those elements, picking it out of all the other things, really doesn't make a lot of sense when you understand. So our traditional ecology is really based in fire. Products, foods, 100% fire dependent. So yeah, that picture, beautiful little reflection of what can happen when fire is used in a way, in a mindful way. This is not a mindful way, but
I can't see the arrows.
I think if you just click the mouse pad and it.
yay. All right. Yeah, Western Oregon, Kalapuya-Ilahi. Here we are in the homeland of the Kalapuya people. People first coming into this country drew pictures, not a lot of photographs, a lot of journal entries and drawings, and overwhelmingly what you find traveling through open park-like settings, grasslands, with a few intermittent groves of oak trees, and a lot of times smoke off in the distance. They would see plumes of smoke. And if you look at these drawings, there's none of the firs that you see. And of course, there's none of the farms and none of the channeling that you see of the rivers. That's what the Willamette Valley looked like. Was a park. It was this park-like setting. It was gorgeous. It's what drew all those settlers into our country. Was this idea that there was this pristine park, you know, presented to us by the Creator, by God Himself, who summoned us there to till the soil and make beauty, totally failing to recognize that this is a tended landscape all along, and the product of tending practices perfected over time immemorial by Indigenous people in this place. And I love that quote there by my friend Esther Stutzman, who's a Kalapuya storyteller. The first whites in the Willamette Valley did not tame a wilderness, they inherited a park. So you can't talk about our ecology, you can't talk about us as a people and our connection to this place without saying a few things about our history here. I really like to start the story with the long Indigenous existence. In other words, the story of all the beautiful things and all the fantastic things that we've achieved as people in this place. Sometimes you just got to tell the story because it's so integral to what has happened since. And all of those there that on the left there, that map, linguists made that. So ethnobotanists made those maps. Maps like that really didn't register for our ancestors. My great aunt Frances Johnson, who was a Takelma woman from Southern Oregon, they asked her to make a map, took her down to Southern Oregon. I think it was Sapir, ethnobotanist, a linguist who took her down there and wanted her to make a map of all of these place names. And all she'd do is just tell stories about where they were and how you got there and what they looked like and what you'd find there when you got there. And that's what maps looked like to a culture with an oral tradition. So these sorts of maps make sense to linguists and you know, the colonizers who came here, and they delineate boundaries that are really very artificial because we really were very attached to our ecologies. And what those little circles really represent are watersheds, areas where resources were concentrated, areas where you know, ceremonies happened in a very specific way related to a river, a watershed, or a resource that was there. There are also individual languages, and it just sort of gives you an idea of how complex and unbelievably complex the cultures, the bands, the tribes of Western Oregon were and remain to this day. But yeah, it's mostly just this artificial imposition of linguistic groups on us. We would be scratching our heads. Our people spoke not just one language, but would frequently speak 2, 4, 5 different languages. It's a little bit like saying your name. Instead of saying, you know, like who you are, where you're from, you just speak your words. People would know. Just the words you were using would tell someone where you were from. And that little corner down there where it's like Gaelish, Takelma, Applegate, that's where my ancestors are from there on the road. road right by Table Rock, jump off Joe Creek. I can go to the place where the village is. Still can go there. Village, but still go there. And so after first contact, things went very badly, very quickly. Our land was taken up through the Donation Land Act. A huge flood of outsiders came via the Oregon Trail and just laid claim to our homelands because of what I was saying, because of all that beautiful land. The most devastating impact came from the miners when they found our gold at the mouth of the Rogue River and then traced it logically back up into the canyon. Great vast quantities of gold. And people who are gold miners, they're not there to put down roots. They're not there to make a connection with the land and the landscape. They're not there just because they want to raise a family. They're there because there's a resource that they want to get rich on. And so anything that stands in their way is just a barrier. And so human beings become just objects in the way of you achieving a goal. And that's how our ancestors treated was as an impediment to the gain of riches. And so the policy of these people, and in fact the government, lobbied by these incredibly powerful and wealthy people, the policy was extermination. It wasn't relocation, it wasn't assimilation, it was extermination. It was the policy of the government. The state of California offered great sums of money for pieces of natives' bodies. So those were actually on the books until the 20s in a lot of places. So we were, for our own safety, in a very real way, put onto the Table Rock Reservation and various other smaller reservations around southwestern Oregon. And then all of those reservations were seeded in the interest of the Coast Reserve, which is all of Central Oregon. There's an amazing Coast Reserve. It's just an amazing reservation, really, all the way from Florence up to Tillamook and inland to the summit of the Coast Range. Just a huge reservation. However, completely alien ecology. If you're from southwestern Oregon, that is not an ecology you're familiar with. I mean, our ancestors were familiar with oak ecology, acorns, lots of camas, yampa, root foods, materials for basketry, all of those things grow in oak savanna areas, and the coast is not exactly rich in oak savanna habitat. So, really separating us from the land is very much more than this sort of abstract idea of removing people from their homelands. It's literally cutting us off from our relative, the ecology that has sustained us since time immemorial. A place we're made of, the place that we're, that makes us, and that we make through those generations. And we were forced onto the reservation, and then over a period of very few years, about 30 years, that entire reservation was gone. It was just taken away. And we were terminated in 1954, and it took until 1977 to be restored. And now here we are, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. So fire, back to fire, thing I've been doing. This is just part of the narrative that you probably all grew up with, smoking bear and huffing and puffing and sniffing the air. And all of this war language about fire, all of these extremely violent framings of what fire is, what fire does. Declaring war on fire, battling fire, wild, like fire's out of control, a forever war. You can see the language that's on there. And of course, that's what you get when you have had 150, 200 years of settlement, is built up fuels. You've got people living in that forest interface. You've got things that would never have happened in the past that are now essentially set up for catastrophe, and we've seen that. We're starting to see that on a regular basis, yearly basis, several times a yearly basis now. And so just kind of keeping those things in mind and understanding that indigenous people have had a relationship with the land that prevented that from happening, again, since time immemorial, kind of has to involve asking the question, well, who are the stewards? Who do we turn to when we have this sort of existential crisis that's burning our communities down, destroying the resources we're saying we're protecting? You know, who do we follow? Who has the leadership? Who has it in their ancestral knowledge to work to prevent those things in the future?
And that's one of the things that traditional ecological knowledge can really do for the wider society.
Not just about
and first, it's not just about the health and well-being of Indigenous people. It's about saving their communities, because Indigenous people know how to work with fire.
And this is what you get when you suppress fire for 150 years. This huge buildup of
grasses and thatch,
sometimes thatch that thick, you know, invasive.
I don't like the term invasive.
How about unwelcome guests? Grasses that are not welcome. You get
choked out oak trees, you get piles and piles of leaf litter.
And all of those are
nutrients and tannins, all these things tied up in this layer that just sits on the soil, keeps moisture from getting down in there, sends signals to the roots of the oak trees.
There's all these tannins, right? So they're soaking down into the soil, the roots of the trees, the rest of the tree is saying, hey, there's tannins. That must mean there's leaves and oak or acorns around there. We don't need to produce acorns. There's plenty of stuff down there already. So without burning, right?
Without burning that off and returning those nutrients to the ground, the oak trees produce acorns, and then people go hungry. So we need to deal with that. Burn off that oak litter about once a year. We have these low intensity fires that go through, keeps that
thatch from building up. Good fire. And then
this is what you get. That's that picture with the sort of the body lying on the outline lying on the road. That's right out in front of our house. You can't see very well. You couldn't see further than probably 200 or 300 yards down the road. And you know, not just thinking about all the communities and all the people and how their lives are devastated, but they're breathing down that.
They're in the air. That was very disturbing to me.
And so, cultural fire versus
prescribed fire. So the work I'm doing right now is in cultural fire. Prescribed fire, just by definition, is prescribed, right? You write it out in advance. You have a plan. It's like this sort of, you know, it's all really very based in military language. There's a command structure. There's an incident approach. So that's prescribed fire. And the Forest Service uses it as a tool for resource management, whereas Indigenous cultural fire is using fire for maintaining cultural resources, food, basketry materials, you know, the forest ecosystem that produces those great big clear grain cedar trees for our structures, willow for all of the things, you know, all of the stuff. That's what
cultural fire is, and that's how it's different.
It's not about maintaining like a cash crop. It's about maintaining a way of life. And these are just some of the
things that you know, the cultural fire in our community, it matters. What, why, how it matters. You know,
go down to tide pool ecology. You know, the water that's washing around in our near tidal zones. You know, a lot of that is mixed in with the, you know, the fresh water that comes out of the rivers and then hits south because of the dominant offshore flow. You know, when there's those catastrophic fires, all of that sediment ends up out there at the mouths of the rivers and filling in the tide pools. So, you know, working to prevent those things from happening enriches our tide pool ecologies and have more delicious mussels. The camas absolutely needs human beings to be interacting with it. You get beautiful big fields of it these days, and you can still see that. And very often those fields full of camas that you see are remnants of tended camas patches associated with village sites of summer camps. And it's beautiful to see them. They need people. They need people there digging them and bringing the bulbs closer to the surface, breaking up that thatch, putting fire in the ground, just changing that ecology back to, restoring it back to the healthy state it has been in the past.
Of course, burning makes all those fresh grasses come up, all those forms, the native grasses, the bunch grasses that are, our elk, our deer, antelope. They vastly prefer bunch grasses and do not respond well to pesticides, which is what's used to suppress all of the unwelcome guests that I was talking about. So, they consume those grasses that have been treated with pesticides. People hunt them. Doesn't matter if you're an indigenous person, non-indigenous person, you're eating the pesticide that they're eating. Their antlers are a really important part of our displays of wealth in our ceremonies. And the antlers that come off of elk that have eaten bunch grasses are strong and straight, don't have that pith in the middle. And ones that have been eating invasive grasses and foods that have been treated with pesticides have very weak antlers. So the tools that are made out of those, the traditional tools, are weaker. It just weakens the entire cultural foundation of all of these practices. There's a picture of Siletz Falls on the Columbia. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Siletz Falls, the story of Siletz Falls, but it's a story of catastrophe for the people of the Columbia Gorge and frankly all of the Northwest, directly related to a compromised ecology. And over there, way on the far side, is a bunch of students I had at Siletz Valley School gathering acorns. Some of the best acorns I've ever found around the Oregon State University campus. There's magnificent oak trees, both black oak and white oak here. So that's all I have to say about that. Lots of good acorns. So this is like, if you're looking for science, you're looking for the clear science part. Right. So these are scientific facts, right? Can be proven, research, Western research method, which is great. It replenishes the soil. I don't have to read this. There's nothing more annoying as reading a PowerPoint presentation to you. Use is such a strong word. In any case, lots of references there. No shortage of validity to these things about what prescribed fire does for the land and the plants and animals, the whole community, people, and everything. I do most of my work in the Longtown watershed. Right now, this is actually the Willamette Valley. So this is predominantly what you would have found in the Esther Stutzman version of the Willamette Valley around 1850. When people first came into the country here, an incredible mix of acres and acres, hundreds of square miles of oak savanna, rolling grassland, big heritage oak trees, river bottom groves, ponderosa pine, some notice for really not very much. They're really an unwelcome guest here in the valley. A lot of people don't realize that. And those savannas extend all the way up into the foothills of the Cascades and sometimes over the top of the Coast Range. Early drawings of Mary's Peak show it completely meadow. It's all meadow up on top, which means it was burned. It was burned regularly to maintain that grassland. And these are just some really fun ways that our sacred fire keeps us connected with the land and our ceremonies with each other. These are my friends Anna and Alai there in the upper right. We were burning on Saipan Marsh for weeding materials and for waterfowl habitat. They're from the Dominican Republic, traditional Taino farmers. We ended up going back there to do a cultural exchange, learn about how they do fire. They have the same thing. They call it slash and burn there. They try to make it sound bad, and it's just or using fire the way it's supposed to be used. There's a Umatilla elder there starting a fire. We did some burning and some ponderosa pine habitat there. And I'm having a great time with my drip torch, which I'll talk about in a second. And of course, we use fire in our medicine. Fire is an integral part of any of the medicines we use, tobacco, sage, all of those. And cedar fire right there in the center of the dance house. That's our most important ceremony we do, feather dance, world renewal. You know, that's the promise we have, the company we have, the creator, to keep the world in balance, keeping the world in balance, people. And without that ceremony, there's no keeping the world in balance. And without that fire, without that cedar fire in the center, there's no ceremony. So that's why that matters. And then for some reason, down in the bottom right-hand corner, I throw in a bunch of pictures of shinny sticks. But that's important too, right? Having a good time, throwing each other on the ground, wrestling, smacking each other with sticks. Good times, good times. And so anywhere you go, this is me in southwestern Oregon, I found fire-scarred trees overgrown with Douglas fir forest. I found places where there were white firs or white oak, black oak, and madrone growing through the same trunk, which is what's called a culturally modified tree. In other words, somebody planted them there. Like somebody clearly planted those trees there. And there are these artifacts, these remnants, like voices from the past saying, you know, people tended the land here. People were in, you know, people loved this place. People put their trust in the land here. And the land put its trust in us to keep that relationship going. Yeah. Good time. And, you know, community, right? All of these things, doing cultural fires, it literally brings communities together. And then in the aftermath, of course, you got to go through and you plant some seeds and get together with the other tribal folks. You plant some bulbs, then you come back next year and you check it out, and the grass is growing and the bulbs are coming up. And you start a sort of intergenerational relationship with land that's been missing. It's been missing for 150, 200 years in one of these places. And so reestablishing that relationship, fire is great to believe that. It set a precedent. What was it that said? Once you burn it, you can't unburn it. And it doesn't really sound very brilliant at the time, but I was like, oh yeah, you know, it's sort of true, right? It's burn, you can't unburn. So yeah, camas ecology is 100% dependent on fire. It'll grow, I mean, it'll keep growing, but to be a sustainable crop and a source of food, it needs fire. It needs attention. So these are just, I have a camas patch I tend near my house. That's another thing too, you know, we have to seek over fences, we have to ask permission, we have to have relationships with individual landowners who may not be there in 10 years. So these are intergenerational tending practices. Like we make a commitment when we start these practices, when we start these procedures, we are doing it with it in mind that our children will be able to do it, that their children will be able to do it. And then we're reestablishing that. So finding places for these things to happen is one of the challenges that we face right now, is having, creating stewardship opportunities. There are collaborations between, you know, stewardship networks. Right now I'm working with the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network, the Kenzie River Trust, various watershed organizations to ensure that we have access to these places enduring. So this is me just sort of experimenting with how deep the camas holes go if they're not burned and they're not tended. And this is several years back. And now the camas holes are a little closer because I've been digging them up and replanting them close to the surface. And it's working. Imagine that. It's actually all working. So being able to come back year after year and watch this process starting to take shape is really amazing. It's so daunting sometimes. You know, it's just so daunting to see these acres and acres of land and all these, you know, hungry people who are just like need these foods and turn to their diets. You know, one step away from a bag of chips, one step toward a pound of acorn flour. You know, that's food sovereignty. That's us one step away from depending on other people for our food. Yeah, now we have an opportunity at the Andrew Reasoner Preserve, which is a place that's our classroom for the traditional ecological knowledge program. pretty cool. We have a campus on it there now. We did a bunch of research.
Nice.
Didn't take a lot of research. We mostly just used our heads, to be honest with you, and built a Camas pit oven. And it's a community event. This will be coming up on the 6th year. So just get together for 3 days and nights, bake Camas, comes out delicious. First year came out incinerated, and the second year maybe a little less incinerated, and now I think you've really got it. And it's beautiful to be able to do that in the community, you know. And it's same with you know, same with oaks. Oaks have a very, very tangible connection to fire. You can actually see the effect of fire on oak trees almost immediately. There's a black oak at the top of the Friesner Preserve where we burned last fall, and it set acorns immediately afterwards. You know, black oak is on a 2-year cycle, so you can see next year's acorns on the tree. Set them immediately. 2 months after the fire was gone, you could see that the acorns were there, ready to go. And there's these little hints of the past all around us, the valley. When you see oak trees like that one right there, somebody had the foresight, I don't know, to cut off one of the giant branches that was hanging out over the parking lot, but it revealed the rest of this oak that is just, it's so huge. Some of them are up to 800, 1,000 years old. So that's a pretty old oak tree, but they're very old. You know, seeing the seedlings come up and seeing how the soil responds when the ash goes back into the ground and those grasses start coming up underneath, and you can just see the whole ecology healing. And indigenous science right there. So our ancestors knew exactly when to burn, you know, just by watching the weather, being tuned into, you know, the larger ecology, understanding there's insect that could really ruin your crop if you were paying attention. And so knowing exactly when to burn to kill off the grubs that drill into the acorns, that ruin the acorns. So just, you know, produce smoke in a way that just took care of some of those grubs. And this cycle of burning and the cycle of the moths, and just kind of each of us staying one step ahead of each other over the centuries, year after year, generation after generation, just really ties us together with that ecology. Look at all this stuff that you get from a oak tree. Like, lots of stuff, everything from entertainment to dye materials to the food itself, basketry, fire starters. Oak trees are like, you know, they say salmon people of the Pacific Northwest are salmon people. A lot of the folks along what is now the Oregon California border will say, well, we're acorn people, or we're basket people, or the root of our ecology, the root of our culture is in the tools that we make from the basketry. The baskets are made out of materials that we tend with fire. And that's what's going on there. That's us tending hazel with fire. So low intensity fire burns through the undergrowth, and it cuts off low, burns down low the hazel plants. Those big long switches, really big tall ones, those are the ones that we use for our baskets. They're straight, they have, I think they're called nodes, but the nodes are really far apart, so the switches themselves are strong and straight, which is what you need for weaving. And yeah, that's Drew Viles down there. Drew Viles makes baby baskets. So you have to have those strong, straight hazel sticks to make a baby basket. And those baby baskets are the first thing that our infants, our fresh infants, go into. And after a month, they get another one. And that's what keeps them safe, are those baskets. And those baskets need those sticks. Those sticks need to not have pesticides in them. They need to be burned. They need these things to work as a nurturing thing for our children. What more can I say about that? And of course, the baskets themselves are also a really important part of ceremony. And we had the opportunity to do feather dance, our renewal ceremony on the national wall at the whatever that thing was called. Folk Life Festival. That's a big deal. I forgot the name. In any case, so this is a women's ceremonial basket cap. Mom's back there, she got one, it's beautiful. I got danced once, and then now it's just very old and it's kind of tired, so we have to kind of take good care of it. But yeah, so that's, I mean, basket, you know, saying medicine foods, it's like food is medicine, right? These things are medicine, all of this is medicine, all of these ecologies produce medicine in one form or another, whether it's the materials to make ceremonial objects, or whether it's the foods themselves that heal and sustain. And these are just some of my favorite things that came out of the burning we did at Restart last fall. And there's a cat's ear, calcordis, one of the most delicious foods I've ever eaten. They're my absolute favorite. There's also now other root crops growing up there in copious amounts. Never been there before. Fibers making cordage, and all of those things. Again, no pesticides. They're as good as or better than a lot of artificial materials that you can get. Plus, the skill sets that go with those are part of this larger cultural revival. I mean, those things are important. These are not just hobbies. There are a lot of these things just really ground us. They're ancestral knowings that are in us. And that part of our healthy existence is bringing those things back out, honoring our ancestors by practicing these things again. The Traditional Ecological Inquiry Program, we've been working with an organization called the Indigenous Fire Practitioners Training, which is all Indigenous-led prescribed fire crew, and I'm working with them now to create cultural fire opportunities. So cultural fire specific curriculum and teaching methods. So very exciting stuff. And yeah, okay, so lots of small words about the Traditional Ecological Inquiry Program, which is the big project I'm working on right now. Back there, we actually have a couple of portfolios that is about the program, if you're interested in looking at that. We're always looking for patrons, right? So it costs money, it's an internship, right? We give successful interns $1,000, like we're paying them to be practitioners, which is something I think, you know, escapes some people. It's like, well, you compensate people for doing the good work. And so that's really the philosophy, is that, you know, this work benefits all of us. So we're going to compensate people for doing that. And again, this work benefits all of us. This attention, this deep understanding, this attention to ecology benefits all of us. Wow, this was so cool. We went to Benton, which is in Southern Oregon, and we had a cultural fire training day for little kids. I was looking for a picture. That's why I was messing around over there. Here's a 3 or 4-year-old girl using mugwort fire starter, starting the fire at Vesper Meadow with girls and women standing around ceremony. It was just beautiful. You know, this kid is not afraid of fire because she knows how to use fire properly. And we went to a thing called Press Training Exchange. UROC hosted every fall and spring. I went last spring. This year, no more cortisone injections, no more knee reconstruction. I'm just not doing it anymore. So this was my one shot at it. It was amazing. Met some really wonderful people. So there's some amazing tribal folks working on these things right now. And they're doing it a lot of times without a lot of attention, without a lot of glory in it. It's just this work that people are doing because it's what their communities have asked them to do. And as it turns out, it really benefits the wider society, particularly in places like California. You know, there was a place where I think it was a car fire came roaring up this ridgeline and reached a place on the Yurok Reservation where they had been doing prescribed fire for hazel and tan oak, and it stopped. and absolutely stopped right there at the edge of the fire that they'd done. And, you know, there was an entire community that these fires have been happening in and around, and there was just no danger to it. Not a smoke. And I think that is it.
We should have some time for questions. If anyone has, and we have a microphone if you want to speak into that or shout it out.
Happy to answer. Yes.
The drawing of the oak that showed acorns as bait. What's that?
I've seen acorns used like in piles because I think there are a lot of ruminants that particularly enjoy acorns. So they can be used that way. They can be used as bobbers. Right. So that's what I know about that.
I think of something where they put the tree nuts so that the animals eat them and disperse and plant them with fertilizer.
The tannins are also can be used to stun or make fish unhappy to a point where they're a lot easier to display. Yeah.
Regarding the impact of the fire on butane production, I know like today what I hear is that oak trees have good acorn years like every several years. So prior to the exclusion of fire, was that not the case? Were there good acorn crops like every, I think you said 2 years or more frequently than I've seen?
So there are a couple of things I know for sure. This last year, there were no acorns and like none. The woodpeckers found them because they're woodpeckers, right? But I couldn't find any. The year before was a crazy good year. And, you know, I don't know what the cycle was before that. It's kind of questions that ethnographers never asked. So, I mean, it's in the hearts and souls of our ancestors. You know, we know it's in there somewhere. We're still working to recover that knowledge. The cycle of plenty and lean years is, to me, just sort of a reflection of trade routes. Like if there was prosperity in a certain area, it meant that you were setting up for marriages and ceremony and gambling with other parts of, you know, similar ecologies with resources that were abundant that you needed. So it's just, that's the little subtleties I sometimes think of is that, you know, yes, there were good years and bad years for acorns, but that didn't necessarily mean that it was, you know, it had to be a, you know, widespread disaster. I don't know if that answers your question.
I've seen these things where the people soak the acorns. Do they have to be soaked? Because I mean, they found these hundreds of years old acorns to get the tannins out, unless they were trying to poison the fish. But are the acorns treated before they're by soaking or fire to lessen the tannins when you make flour or something? Sorry.
Yes. There. So right here, there's black oak, white oak, and if you got cool friends, you get tan oak too from like Hollywood country, closer to the coast, down south. And yeah, tan oak you can almost just eat right out of the shell. Black oak and white oak take a lot of leafing.
Oh.
And you know, I could talk. If you were acorn people, and I know acorn people, by the way, talk for hours literally about the techniques that have been used to, because, you know, a lot of times indigenous people go for food resources that are abundant and relatively easy to process. Acorn processing is intense, it's labor intensive, it has low yield, requires an incredible amount of caloric output relative to the amount that comes in, but it's beautiful. like the technologies that are involved. There's beautiful baskets and grinding tools and just the community and songs, ceremony, all the stuff that goes with it. So it's more than just the calories. It's just this incredible, just incredible complex of just human interaction with that ecology to make it food. But yeah, it requires leaching to the towns, for sure.
I hadn't ever thought about the different kinds of acorns. So I'm on this website where they talk a lot about planting trees as a kind of resource management. It's non-indigenous, but it's very interesting about using the fruits of your labor and getting the resources spread where things have been just taken away.
Something to keep in mind, we don't need more trees, we need better trees.
Yeah.
I know, we just opened it up. It's just a thing, it's like, we gotta plant 1 million trees by the end of blah. It's like, no, we just need to take care of the ones that are there. We need to get rid of half of them. Yes.
So you told a beautiful story about the role of fire in traditional society, why we should be doing it today. And we live on some of this land, and there are so many barriers to burning. So do you have any practical suggestions or advice on how we could actually return that practice? Because we'd enjoy it, we'd love to do it, but I'm kind of afraid.
Well, and good, good. No, so there will be more and more, I think, opportunities for partnerships and community involvement. Right now, we are just barely at a point where we are starting relationships with like federal agencies. And what I mean by that is like the tribes themselves, Siletz and Grand Bronx specifically, starting to have relationships with the Bureau of Land Management, the Forestry Department, relationships that will bring about access to public land by tribal people to do cultural fire. In the meantime, there are different rules and regulations for like private landowners, and those relationships are a lot easier. At the same time, it's like that thing I said about climbing over fences for camas patches and showing up and not knowing if that land is going to be there in 10 years. So forming a relationship with a private landowner, like we all have our hearts in the right places with those things, but none of us live forever. And unless there's a stewardship plan in place, an enduring stewardship plan in place, there are a lot of folks that just who are reluctant to start that relationship if they don't know that their kids will be able, their grandkids will be able to go back to that place and tend it with fire and maintain the important fire regimen that started there. So does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah. But even for the cultural or the, I guess, other benefits for a healthier forest, we'd love to do that too. And there's just so many things that you run up against for actually making it happen.
It's easier than a lot of people think. Actually, I was actually kind of surprised. They're like, if it's anything other than like 3 acres and it's on private land, you don't need permits or anything. The #1 challenge that we face in terms of permitting and just like the public is smoke. Smoke is a thing. And smoke is a trigger. Like people smell smoke, they remember all the fires and the fires in the future that will come, and it's a trigger. And so, understanding that good smoke smells different than bad smoke, I think people will someday understand the nuances of things like that, but it's a process. So smoke's a barrier, understanding all the rules and regulations is a barrier, but if you're a private landowner, consider one of those, like we work in Reasoner is under a conservation easement. And there's different kinds, cultural conservation easements, resource conservation easements. Those are helpful. Yes.
Another barrier, I think, is mindset. I've changed my mind as I've listened to you this evening. I live in a community which is just getting ready to have a Firewise presentation. An organization called Firewise comes into communities and teaches us how to make our land safe and prevent fire happening. And so there's a, you know, a lot of effort in removing, you know, combustible material, including trees from around the house and so on. So it's all about protection of property, and by that I mean, you know, buildings, and not an emphasis on the health of the land. So if your message can reach, you know, folks in communities where we're being taught to think about preventing fire and be more open-minded, so how fire can help us protect our property in the future for the future generations, so that we don't end up with massive burns like we've watched on the TV. That would be great. As I say, it's been a mindset change for me.
I'm so happy to hear that. Like, wow.
Sorry, that wasn't really a question. I didn't need to.
No, that's not. You're thinking about it. Nice work. Did you was there? Yeah.
Have you found evidence of burnt camas in prehistoric fire pits or camas ovens?
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of evidence of camas being cooked and paleo. There are sites throughout the Willamette Valley where people have found. Mom's here. I don't want to call her out, but they're wet digs. There are places where water is inundated a cultural site and preserved it. And so there are places where there actually is still like burned camas and the associated oven still there. So yeah, and the other stuff too, like yamba and calcortis and rhodias, all of those would be crops.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it, Joe. I hope you brought us all back down to earth. So next time we're out partying, we'll look around. This picture right here in this corner, I had a pleasure of seeing Joe's presentation. He really gets excited when he can burn the grasses for you, and that's what he's doing here. Shows you how each one of, like the oak leaves or the dry grass and everything burns. I think he would have done it here tonight, but the museum probably didn't like that. Thanks again, Joe. Appreciate it.
The evening is young.
Okay, got it. Cool. Sarah, we need the more help.
Okay.
Didn't work.
Click. There.
All right. That's a hard act to follow, but with some boring figures. But what's really important about this is, you know, Nate said property owners. What's really important, you are property owners, or if you are renting, there's a property owner. And that property owner gave us a lot of our revenue. And we thank you very much. It's 5 cents per thousand. And so most of our money comes from that tax levy that you're providing us. So again, we'd like to thank you for that. The other comes from grants. We see that there's 350,000 there. Our native plant sale, which is coming up. You're going to get a couple plugs for that tonight. So if you haven't ordered your plants, they're available. We get $34,000 for that. Fees and services are low. Our miscellaneous interest. The neat part is that all that money that you provide for us, 83% of it is spent on projects. Only less than 2% is spent on administration. And I think, you know, a lot of agencies don't do that. It's kind of reverse sometimes, where you pay a lot of money for staff and there's nothing to happen. The key to that is that when you subtract what we made and what we spent, we are $74,000 plus in that we got to carry over this year. So again, I thank you for what you do for us, as well as what we can hopefully do for our Benton County. So with that, I'm going to introduce, you know, I thought tonight too, the staff have the longest names or position names of any organization that I have ever worked for. So I'm going to have Michael come up here, who is the National Resource Conservation Program Manager. And we're working on making them longer each time we hire a new staff member. So Michael, turn it over to you. Thank you.
I have one form I often have to sign and put my title in, and it just shrinks it down to make it fit. So it's no longer readable. So I have to abbreviate it. We'll work on shortening that stuff. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. It's really cool to see such a big room of folks and people that are interested in getting back out here and seeing some cool presentations and stuff. So yeah, so I've been here since April of 2021, and I'm the Natural Resource Conservation Program Manager, as what was just said, which means that I help kind of oversee some of the technical and on the ground work that goes out. But a lot of that's done with the leadership, of course, of our resource conservationists that were introduced before, but that would be Teresa Madison and Donna Schmitz. So I'm going to flip through just about 6 or 7 slides here and talk a little bit about some of just our accomplishments from last year as part of this annual meeting. So one thing that we do a lot of is respond to questions. So as technical staff, we get phone calls and emails with all sorts of questions about just help identifying an invasive species, or really big questions that are just intricate, you know, resource issues out there on the land. Some questions can just be answered by that quick phone call or email, but a lot of things require a site visit. So last year we did over 100 technical assistance kind of responses, I guess you'd say, and quite a few of those ended up being site visits. And so one thing that's nice is for land managers or landowners who have issues out on the property, is we are pretty able to come out and give folks a visit and walk the land and look at things and answer questions. So you'd often hear us on the phone in the office saying, you know, it'd be easier if we just got together out on the land and took a look. So we do a lot of site visits. So that's always exciting to report. And when we have a really, really good site visit, it can result in cool projects like you see pictured here. So it's not uncommon for folks to call us with streams and talk a little bit about, you know, erosion or bank stabilization issues, or just wanting to have better habitat for wildlife along their streams. So since 2000, the year 2000, we've been pretty involved with the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. And just last year, we did 6 conservation plans that were written to do some restoration and some tree and shrub planting on about 180 acres. But in the life of our commitment to the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program since 2000, we've done, I think it's about 45 conservation plans that planted more than 1,000 acres of streamside habitat in Benton County, which is really exciting. So in any given year, we might do a few conservation plans, and then we also will help do a little bit of implementation with the landowners or land managers of some of these projects. So last year, 80 riparian acres were planted through PrEP and other grants. So that was kind of a nice habitat sort of picture, the last one I showed with all of those protected trees around plants next to streams. But not all that we do is necessarily real habitat oriented. As you can see the 3 pictures in there, this is more of like the near the barn area on a property, or manure storage and livestock and things like that. So each year we usually write at least, you know, a couple OWEB small grants. And OWEB is an acronym that I'll throw out a few times here in the next few slides, but it stands for the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, which is a state agency. They have a small grant program where you can ask for up to $15,000. And when you get the $15,000, you can do a variety of different things with it, but it is competitive. So you have to kind of write up your plan and see if you can get funding or not. And usually Donna Schmitz is helping folks with these. But these small grants here that you see pictured are a manure compost bin, which maybe doesn't sound super duper exciting, but it's actually really cool because it keeps manure from being dropped near the stream and rained upon and all sorts of different things leaching into the water. So manure compost can be a really good thing to do to have nice manure that actually can become fertilizer that goes back out on the land. And then also a lot of mud is generated near these areas. So hard rock paddocks to reduce mud around horses or other animals can be really great for water quality. And then with the small grants, we also do some riparian fencing and plantings. And I keep saying riparian, I forget already if I defined it or not, but riparian is kind of another word for stream side. I'm sure a lot of you folks in the room know that term. And then lastly, kind of on this habitat track, we have this project that was called the 100-Acre Wood, and it's kind of off Llewellyn Road. And this was a larger OWEB grant that we were managing for a while. So Donna, I know, has worked with this project and has a couple others going right now for fish habitat and oak restoration, that it can be six-figure kind of awards that we can get to do really large restoration projects. So this one was a really cool one where we did 5,500 feet of fencing and then also a stream crossing and 3 watering facilities. And the significance of those 3 items is those are all contributing to helping keeping livestock out of the stream. Because when we get livestock, too many of them in concentrated areas in a stream, we get some poor water quality usually and some erosion and some turbidity in the water. So when we add the fencing, we can keep them out of the stream. And then you add watering facilities so that you can help get water to the to those animals, because they were probably once counting on the stream to get that. So also part of this project, we had 13 acres of oak savanna restoration, 23 acres of wetland restoration, which was largely getting rid of non-native invasive species and trying to bring in some native seeds to enhance that. And then there was also 15 acres of riparian area. So that was a really cool project. And then a lot of folks here, as we noticed earlier, know Teresa Madison, who in all my years working for conservation districts before I got here, Teresa was definitely known as a soil health guru all throughout the state of Oregon, definitely Western Oregon. And so it was really cool to get here and start to try to glean a little bit of that knowledge, although I'm not sure I've picked up too much of it yet. But she's got a really cool project going, which is an OWEB NRCS technical assistance grant. So to get this grant, you have to kind of collaborate with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a very important federal partner of ours that does a lot of soil and water conservation. And then we end up getting support from them, and we can get some Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board funding that will help us fund the opportunity to get out there and do some soil health testing, and also to just help fund some of our staff time to do that kind of work. So Teresa's been going out and she's gotten samples from 13 different fields so far and is working diligently to add to that number over the next few months. And she's able to then analyze some of the results of these soil health tests and make some recommendations on what farmers might be able to do. And we thank our contractors of Andy Gallagher with Red Hill Soils, as well as the OSU Soil Health Laboratory for helping us do a lot of this work. And another kind of call out on this is just that Teresa's done a really great job of working with interns locally to give them experience. I'm a person who went to a soil class in college that wasn't not terribly interesting. And so at OSU, you get to have exposure to really exciting soil people, including Teresa, who often does guest lectures and different things in classes. And so it's really cool to see Teresa come back, and she's got a list of folks that would be interested in interning with her to just go dig up soil, which is really cool. So the other thing I should mention too is we keep very busy working with our strategic implementation area. So the Oregon Department of Agriculture has a lot of different geographies or watersheds around the state where they want to have strategic implementation areas. So we have one in Benton County, and it's the Upper Muddy Creek watershed. And the idea there is to get farmers to kind of install some nice conservation practices or correct maybe some resource concerns. And then we hope by monitoring the water quality, we'll see a beneficial change over time. So part of that is going out there and sampling it monthly at 4 different locations to look at dissolved oxygen, conductivity, E. coli, phosphorus, suspended solids. And in this picture, we have Jasmine and Aubrey, who are 2 staff at the Marys River Watershed Council, and they help us get out there on that monthly basis and actually get those results, which is really important. So, yeah, exactly. I forgot about him since he's not here right now, I guess. But no, Aubrey's great. Aubrey's a really cool resource that works with us on some of the things featured in the next 2 slides I'm going to show as well. So one of the projects I help coordinate is the Willamette Mainstem Cooperative. And a quick kind of rundown of the Willamette Mainstem Cooperative is you get watershed councils all around the state that will be focused on places like the Lucky Meat River, the Marys River, things like that. Then the 187-mile Willamette River in the middle of all that doesn't really have a watershed council. So Brad Withrow Robinson, a recently retired OSU extension agent with some landowners like Peter Carnegie and Marvin Gilnor and some other partners came up with the Willamette Mainstem Cooperative concept a while back, where partners in this area get together and sort of discuss that Corvallis to Albany stretch of the Willamette River and talk about priorities and things we could do there. So each summer since I've been here, which is just 2 summers now, we really try to pay attention to the Peoria boat launch all the way up to Tequila Landing in North Albany, which is a 22-mile stretch of the Willamette River, where we go out and survey for invasive species on the river. The 2 that we see the most and can really, I think, still do the most about would be the yellow floating heart, which is that top right picture for you all, which looks like a lily pad with yellow flowers sticking out of it. That's a very high priority aquatic invasive species in Oregon. It's on the Oregon Department of Agriculture's A list, which means we think we can actually eradicate it. So hopefully we could do that. But what I'm excited about is we're doing a really good job of controlling that in our stretch of the Willamette, because we only are managing about 4 locations of it, and they're all quite small. So it may not sound like a lot of work, but that's really a result of all of the inventory we're doing all the time to keep track of it. So that's pretty nice. And then we also do some Ludwigia removal, have a lot of conversations about how to better prioritize that statewide, and especially in the Willamette River. But a really neat thing this year was that we had 2 on-water volunteer weed pool events where folks got out in canoes, like you can see in the photo. The nearest to us are 2 state park rangers that were helping us kind of with safety that day. And then we had 18 total volunteers on the 2 events this year. Willamette Riverkeeper was another partner, and we went out and pulled a whole bunch of parrot feather and Ludwigia on Lower Kyger Island, and then also the East Channel, which is a channel that kind of wraps around and comes back into the Willamette River right by the Crystal Lake boat ramp, South Corvallis. And so there's been some volunteers that have helped with these things in the audience right now, expert canoers, which we really appreciate. So my last slide then is, I've been talking a lot about invasive species with those river photos, but we kind of have an upland, I guess, invasive species program too that I try to keep track of, which is largely centered around this, cursor work? Yeah, so this is a Euphorbia oblongata, or oblong spurge, which is a really beautiful, showy yellow landscape plant that a lot of people in Corvallis have planted, but now you can't buy it because it's an A-list invasive species because it really likes to spread. So 9 times out of 10, if I meet somebody who has this, they report getting it at some garden sale in Corvallis, years back, and it's really taken over a few people's yards. But north of town, kind of in the Vineyard Mountain area, it's creeping into some oak woodlands. So that kind of concerns me that it's getting into those spaces. We don't need anything else going against oak. So this is a fun one to look at, though, and most people are very cooperative in working with us to get rid of their oblong spurge. Most people are really just kind of managing it themselves because it's been a lot of yards. So, and then we also work, we help lead the Benton County Cooperative Weed Management Area. And one of our claims to fame this year that we're excited about was getting back out again with volunteer events, where we had the Let's Pull Together event at 3 different sites, which was the Marys River Park in Willamette, Tequila Landing in North Albany, and the Witham Hill Natural Area in Corvallis. And on that site, Aubrey, who we mentioned before, was actually helping run that site that day. And they were cutting down hawthorn, and at Marys River Park, where I was, we were cutting ivy off of trees, which you can see kind of a picture of that where there's a person stuck in a big leaf maple here trying to cut ivy out of it. So that's pretty much the rundown of some of the highlights of our year out on the ground as a technical staff. So thanks for that. Should I see if there's questions? Or? Okay, probably talk too fast. And I'll be hanging around if you have a question at the end you want to ask. Go ahead. A site like that, if it had a lot of trees and like a good bit of work, could be cool to even wrap into the Let's Pull Together event as a potential site for in May of this year. We try to do that during Oregon's Invasive Species Awareness Week. So I think it's always the third Saturday of May. We try to have the Let's Pull Together event. You could contact me and we could try to set it up. We just have to get a good site host for sure. You might nominate yourself, right? Just did. Yeah. But yeah, that's cutting ivy off trees is a pretty rewarding experience. Actually, it's kind of satisfying, I think. But we could always give some advice on how best to get that started. Yes. That's a great question. So one thing that I like to mention, but it didn't tonight with invasive species, is that in my experience as a conservation district employee, and I think Donna Schmitz would certainly agree with this just because she's kind of out on more habitat projects, but probably true of Teresa as well, is you talk about invasive species on practically any site visit you ever do, whether it's farm, ranch, or forest. There's always some sorts of weeds to talk about. So in a lot of ways, we're constantly encouraging people to treat them by at least giving some advice. As far as kind of putting some money to it or finding funding to help with that, it usually has to be part of a larger restoration project where it's not just a goal to get rid of something, but more to really enhance the habitat. So sometimes we're getting rid of blackberry, which is like, oh, that's everywhere. That can be attractive if we're talking about bringing in pollinator hedgerows to cover it up, or we're thinking about enhancing oak habitat. We might be able to get that worked into some kind of restoration project that could get some financial resources behind it. But otherwise, because we are limited in how far we can stretch, we mainly focus on A-list weeds, which are the highest priority for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. We have two of those, which is the yellow floating heart lily pad looking thing I showed, and then that oblong spurge. And so when you have those, you can write grants and more easily get funding to help with things. So I'm able to get funding to help do that kind of work a lot easier than some of the more kind of ubiquitous weeds. But we're always interested in getting reports of invasive species because sometimes where it all starts is someone goes onto the Oregon Invasives hotline and we have one right now that's like, Cape pondweed. I was emailing with you about it. Cape pondweed was found in Benton County, which might actually be kind of a big deal. And it's over in like the Starker Arts Parks pond. And we're there right now deciding if that's an invasive species or not. You have to do like a risk analysis of that. So it's always evolving anyway. Anything else? Yes. Yeah, and one slip I can make a lot too is make it sound like we manage these projects and we really assist with them. The land, it's all about the landowner managing them for the most part. So the landowner was really the impetus and kind of the wheels behind all that. But that's just one where we typically try to write a 2 to 5 year kind of plan of restoration for sites. And eventually you kind of got to graduate them and they're never really done. I mean, especially if you have ivy on the site, you'll be still pulling ivy for the next 100 years. It's a shade tolerant weed that's about impossible. But so they'll always still need maintenance. But as far as our kind of heavy lift is finished there, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like really respect it? Is it like basically like in my head it's like you have to replace it otherwise
Yeah, so the quick answer on that is a lot of times you get sun-loving weeds like a blackberry or Scotch broom. In those cases, if you remove them and replace them, you theoretically can shade them out. Like we've seen blackberries shaded out by Douglas fir, for instance, and it's this thorny dead patch that's terrible to try to walk through, but it's dead. But shade tolerance, a whole other story altogether, because you could throw all these violets and salal and things like that around it, but if it's still there, it just still wants to grow. But I do think you can get some gains by trying to occupy the site with something that's vigorous and healthy. If you pick the right plant, you get a little bit of competition going. All right, let's turn it over to what do we got? Education and outreach.
Do I have to move this for my short stuff? Good. I understand. Okay. Hi again, everyone. So again, I'm Sarah. I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator, which I think ties me with Michael for title length. But as Holly mentioned, I just started here about 5 months ago, and it's been an action-packed several months. And we've been, up to a lot of great things for outreach. So I'm going to be talking kind of in general about some of the things we do with education and outreach, and then kind of highlighting some of the things I've been working on, and then things that I'm kind of moving towards and hoping to continue to work on in the next year. So we have 2 annual plant sales, and one is our bulb and seed sale, which is specifically for bulbs and seeds, as you might have guessed. And that runs every year in the fall because that's a great time to plant bulbs and seeds. And this year we were really lucky. We actually did it at the Corvallis Fall Festival, which I think was a really great opportunity for us, for exposure. People who wouldn't normally come to a separate event were there anyway. So we got to chat with a lot of great people and kind of interest people in native plants. So I think it was a really great atmosphere for us. And I'll mention volunteers many times. We are a very small staff, and so we really rely on volunteers for all the events we do, really. So we had about 20 volunteers over the weekend at the Corvallis Fall Festival. We had kind of a education station set up with some free resources and, planting guides. We had staff there to, answer questions and kind of advise people on, maybe what they should pick based on their site or their, conditions. And this year we had 11 species of bulbs and 6 seed species or seed mixes. We had like a pollinator seed mix and then a monarch butterfly seed mix. And we sold out of, I think, all the bulbs or almost all the bulbs on day 1 on Saturday. So, which was great for us because that really tells us people are interested in this and they want to be planting these things. That was really exciting. So we sold over 1,000 bulbs by the end of it, and pretty much almost everything. There were a few seeds that didn't sell, but almost everything sold out over those 2 days. So that was really, really, great news for us because we love native plants and we want them out there. So our other plant sale, this is the one you may be more familiar with, is our annual kind of big plant sale. And as Jerry mentioned, it's going right now. We actually extended the online ordering period to February 8th. So if you saw it was the 1st and you were worried about that, now you have another week. And there's still, I think, around almost 30 species-ish. Some have sold out, but there's still plenty on there to do your shopping. We'll plug for that a little bit more at the end too. But how it works is you do your online order and you can put in, several different orders, and then all your orders will be bundled together and you'll pick it up at the fairgrounds on February 25th. So we, again, need lots of volunteers for this event. We can still use some more. So if you're interested in kind of getting involved with us at Benton SWCD, this could be a really great opportunity to come and meet some great people and have fun. But as far as stats go, this is, I think, as of this morning, so almost 18,000 in sales so far with still some time to go, 320 orders, over 6,000 plants sold. So that's really exciting. And we have, if you haven't shopped on this plant sale before, there's a lot of bare root selections, which is great because you can get things for really inexpensive. You can get, you know, trees and shrubs in bare root form for really inexpensive. We also have some potted things. We have some bulbs and rhizomes and some seeds as well. So pretty much if you've got any space in your garden, we've got something that'll probably work there. And then for our kind of online presence, our social media. So again, I only started 5 months ago, but my position was vacant for some time before that. So I've been kind of working on rebuilding our online presence. So I created a Twitter account for us at Benton SWCD, and I've been trying to post on all of our different social accounts at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times. And mainly we've been using that to kind of promote these plant sales because that's been, you know, the biggest things over the last several months. But also I really want to share what our staff is up to because, you know, as Michael talked about everything, there's so much great stuff happening and our staff is out in the field all the time, you know, working with people, doing, you know, all that really hard nitty-gritty work. So I really encourage you, if you don't follow our social media, to do that. Look for us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube as well. And over the next, you know, year, I really want to add a lot of stories of what the staff are up to. And we've seen a lot of increase in engagement since I've just kind of been more reliably posting kind of across all the channels. So these are some of the, just some, you can't really see them, but some of our posts that were kind of had the most engagement. And one of them was I did a feature on Oregon ash, which is one of our trees, you know, available in our native plant sale. But of course, if you've heard of the emerald ash borer as a possible potential threat, and there's a really great conversation that happened on our Facebook page of people asking about that. And, you know, should I plant the ash, you know, because of this threat? And I consulted with Michael, like what should we tell people? And it was just a great opportunity, I think, for us to engage people on a really like kind of important issue and an issue that we're still genuinely figuring out. So yeah, so definitely join us on social media if you haven't yet. This is a fun event that we help out with annually, the Lincoln Family STEAM Night. And if you haven't heard that acronym, you may have heard of STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And STEAM just adds in the arts piece of it and kind of looks at the relationship between all those disciplines. And so this is hosted by Lincoln Elementary School every year in cooperation with the OSU Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And then they have a bunch of community partners and organizations come and do tables with interactive STEM or STEAM activities. And because Lincoln is a dual immersion school, they actually run this whole event bilingually. So every table, either you bring your own interpreter or they provide one. So it's a fully, you know, dual immersion event, which is, I think, really, really cool. So kids get to bring their families to, you know, kind of learn about the science that the kids are learning, and they all kind of get to learn about these organizations together. And this year's is actually tomorrow night. So I haven't gotten to do it yet, but I'm doing it tomorrow night. I'm going to be doing some, I think, plant dissections and things like that. So that's a really fun way to engage a really great corner of the community. And Salmon Watch. So this is our biggest kind of K-12 education program that we do. So Salmon Watch is actually a national program, but it's kind of coordinated just in different areas by different organizations. So Benton SWCD coordinates the Salmon Watch program for Benton County schools specifically. And then other soil and water conservation districts they're kind of in their geographic area. So the goal of Salmon Watch is to get kids out in the field and learning about not just salmon specifically, but about riparian ecology, learn about our watersheds, and kind of really learn about the relationship between salmon, which is a really important native species for, you know, heritage reasons, cultural reasons, economic reasons, and kind of learn about it and learn how they contribute to a healthy ecosystem and how, you know, they need a healthy ecosystem as well. And so this program's geared for 5th grade is kind of the ideal, but I had kids as young as, oh gosh, I had 3rd graders this year, which was fun to see their little selves in the river. That was, you know, up to their boots. And then I had high schoolers come as well. So we kind of run the gamut. But the kids go out, it's a 4-hour outdoor field trip in the fall in Oregon. So as you might imagine, there's a lot of, you know, rain and even sometimes ice and snow. And those kids just bundle up and they get out there and they rotate through 4 different stations and they learn about, you know, salmon life history and biology and life cycles. They learn about riparian ecology. They get to take some nets and go collect macroinvertebrates or insects from the water and kind of identify them. And then they also get to test the water for dissolved oxygen and you know, salinity and pH and all of these really cool different things. And they're charged when they arrive. We say, hey, you're a biologist. You are looking, you know, to see if you feel like this is a healthy river for the salmon to be in. And then the really cool part is that where we are in Clements Park in LC, it is a spawning grounds for both coho and Chinook fall salmon. So I think I think I only had 1 or 2 schools this year who didn't see any fish at all. And pretty much all of the kids got to see these big salmon, you know, sometimes just 50 feet away in the river. We saw a couple incidences of spawning, and it's really special. And the kids just get such a great connection to, you know, what's going on in this kind of really iconic fish. So it's a really special, exciting program. So we do about 5 weeks in the fall. This past fall, we had 15 schools come, a couple of new schools, which was exciting. And this is very volunteer dependent as well. So I'm always looking for more Salmon Watch volunteers. So if this all sounds really exciting to you, even if you don't know anything about fish or rivers or anything, but you like this stuff, let me know and keep your, you know, make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter, because I'm going to do some trainings later in the summer. And I'm always looking for more volunteers who are just passionate and interested in this stuff, because it's pretty much volunteer run, all the stations. This past year, we had over 640 students come. And we also host a volunteer appreciation night, which we did in December this year at Block 15 Tap Room, just to kind of, you know, celebrate our volunteers and thank them for all their hard work. Do I have anyone in the room who volunteered for Salmon Watch? Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like there's some familiar, yes, thank you, thank you. So for Salmon Watch, so this year I did some more, I guess, intensive evaluation than has been done sometimes for this program. So I sent some evaluations to both teachers and volunteers, and you probably can't really see most of those things. But essentially I asked about, you know, how did they feel that this program impacted student learning? You know, how did you find the program logistics, the communication? So these are just some of my favorite quotes from teachers. You know, it seemed like a lot of them felt it had a really positive impact. You know, they basically overwhelmingly said that they felt it, you know, contributed to student understanding of ecology, that, you know, students gained greater appreciation for their watersheds and for nature. So it's just a really special program. And like I said, if this sounds cool to you, you can always come and volunteer, or you could just come and shadow if you're just kind of interested in seeing the program. And then finally, you know, again, we are a small staff, so we have, you know, limited capacity, but we're part of this amazing network of Willamette Valley, you know, environmental organizations who are all doing incredible work. And so we like to team up with others as much as we can to sort of combine forces. So I'm part of the Conservation, Education, and Outreach Collaboration Group. Long name. With all the other Oregon soil and water conservation districts. So that's like a gathering where we exchange ideas. There's also a Corvallis area specific environmental educator group that I just joined and I'm going to be a part of. We're part of the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. We also have the Conservation Community Network, which Teresa runs. And so that's a great one. You can join that mailing list separate from our regular newsletter, and that blasts out things kind of specifically about conservation events, education events. The Willamette Valley Regenerative Landscape Coalition, and then something really great we do, you know, to really kind of put our money where our mouth is, I guess, is we do provide some financial support for all 4 of the watershed councils who work in Benton County. So we give that kind of annual automatic support just because we work with the watershed councils so heavily. And then finally, we do offer small grants for any local educator who's looking to do something for conservation education. And it's pretty broad. So, you know, we have teachers who want to build school gardens or, you know, take kids on field trips or buy supplies. Sometimes it's for programs at one of these partner organizations that they're kind of trying to get off the ground. So it's just a really great opportunity for us to kind of, you know, again, combine our resources and sort of work together. So what I'm hoping to do kind of as I move forward in this position is to really build those partnerships even more and kind of solidify them and really work together on some, you know, especially maybe more K-12 experiences. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to kind of continue, hopefully building our outreach and our, you know, reach. So I think that was, yeah, that was my last slide. So are there any questions about outreach and education stuff? Not as exciting as yeah.
The government organizations, whatever, and Benton County was the first county in the state of Oregon to recognize the national.
Cool.
The other day, associated with the natural areas.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on with that with local organizations. I know you can go on and you can kind of certify your backyard. I think that's that same program. You can go on and kind of answer a questionnaire about your property and they'll, you know, kind of send you like a certification. But I'm not sure if anyone's actually organizing that on a larger level here in Corvallis. If they are, I would love to be a part of it. And I think that's something we, you know, as an organization would like to expand to, because we do work quite a bit with landowners with larger properties, but there's a lot of folks with, like me, who have a small yard, but I'm really passionate about native plants. And I would love, you know, some guidance and support to kind of just in my small patch of land, make it better. So I think that would be something really great to continue to work on as well. Ooh, Holly.
And I know that is some work with Molly Monroe, because she was really involved. But more recently, it was more when that big.
Once we got the Benton County certified, it was like, okay,
now what do we?
So, you know, that could be something.
Yeah. Yes. Totally. Yeah. Well, we can drop a little like hint, because Michael and I have been talking about in the spring doing some twilight tours of people who've done this sort of regenerative landscaping with native plants and, you know, taking advantage of some of these property owners who have done all this amazing work and letting the public in to kind of show what that looks like and how to do it. So yeah, I think that would be a great thing to kind of jump off on. But since you mentioned Doug Tallamy, I never know how to say it, but he's a real, if you're interested in this stuff, he's a really wonderful author and speaker to look into. If you haven't read his books, they're kind of life-changing and mind-blowing, and they'll make you want to run out and buy all the native plants in the world like I did. So I really encourage you to look into that. And our website's actually a really great resource for this stuff too. So I'm assuming all of you have been on our website to register for this event at least, but I encourage you to kind of poke around. There's tons of resources on there for, you know, meadowscaping, there's garden design plans and all sorts of great stuff. So definitely look for those things. And if there's things that you want to see and resources you need, definitely reach out to us. And that's the sort of thing that I can work on getting out there as well. Okay, I'm going to pass it back over to Nate.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. No. Okay. Thank you. So at the end of the meeting here, we just wanted to take a few moments and really just thank all the people who serve on the board. And we have some newly elected board members this year. David Barron was elected to join, Marcella Henkels, Carrie Hastings. And in most cases, these folks have been serving as associate directors. And that's a great way for folks to sort of get their toe in the water and see if they want to take part in activities of the board or be a board member. And you can apply, on our website and get looped in that way. But really want to congratulate those folks for getting elected and joining the board officially for the next term. And then I also want to mention the new associate directors. Henry Pitts is here. Good to see you, Henry. Thanks for joining us. And Aubrey Cloud, who was mentioned earlier, new associate directors. And then Ren is always also here too. Good to see you. She's been an associate director for a long time. Good to see you too. But I also want to take a minute here and I want to thank all the departing directors. And in some cases, we've got folks who are moving on after having been directors for a long time. And Faye Yoshihara is here. Saw her. There she is. And she was board chair before me, and she served on the board for a good long time and had the unenviable task of trying to run the board when COVID first hit and through the whole craziness of 2020 and on. And we owe her a debt of gratitude for that because she did a marvelous job. And she's also, she's a true conservationist, and she and her husband have a place that they've put a lot of effort into. And anyway, she's just a really good example of a local citizen conservation activist, I guess you'd say, and a leader. I also want to mention Bob Morris. Bob Morris is going to be sticking with us as a emeritus director. Bob has also been on the board for a while and contributed quite a bit and has done a lot to help me along in the first bit of being on the board and taking on an officer role. And then I also want to mention Henry Storch. And Henry, I got to say, I have a lot of respect for. I have a lot of different meetings that I've gone to. I've had to do all this remote for a long time now. And Henry will call in from a site where he's taken all of his bees. He's a beekeeper. He's a master beekeeper. And so he's got his bees somewhere and he's got to call in from his truck. And the fact that he would do that so regularly, and it was wherever he was at, he would make the time and come into the meetings. I've always respected that. And you're going to be missed at those regular meetings if you don't end up coming, but I hope you do. And then Graham Trask is departing as a director, and he had been a director for a while. I don't know if he's here tonight. I don't think he is. And we want to thank him for his service too. And I think that takes care of folks who are moving to that position. And this is another opportunity to plug the native plant sale, which it's just really a good time. I think most people, if you haven't been to it, you'd enjoy it. I mean, if you're here tonight and you care about land conservation and native plants and really trying to decolonize in a lot of cases some of these landscapes and reintroduce these native plants and bring some populations back. It's a really vibrant event, and you meet a lot of people. It's a real community event where sometimes you'll see only the only time you'll see these people is at this event. I'll see certain folks every year, and it's kind of a joy to see these plant people come together and really support the effort. And so please remember, if you haven't already, to go and check out what we've got. And a lot of species still available. And I've, when I first got to this town, a quick aside, my wife and I, my wife Edith is here with me. We run a farm. And when I first got here, I had to figure out how to try to make a living. I'm still trying to figure out how to make a living. But I had to try to figure out how to make a living doing something off the farm. And the thing that I could do when I got here was I basically was a gardener for hire. In the hours that I wasn't farming, I would get off the farm and I'd go help different people in the community. And some of the folks in the community that had been gardening a long time were way into. Lou Gordon, especially, is a guy that I really admired and worked for. And he had been into this planting native plants. And so I got introduced to the district first by being taken to the native plant sale so that I could help this guy that I worked with grab 30 different plants. And then I got to plant these different things and got to see like woodland poppies for the first time in my life. Just things you don't, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it really clued me into all the possibilities here and ways that we can actually incorporate these things into the landscapes that we're caring for, that we admire and love. And it was such a strong organization. I mean, it felt like being introduced to a real, like, solid institution. I felt like I was actually proud that Corvallis had, a district that did something like this. And I've continued to be. And it was one of the reasons that I decided I would continue to be a part of it and be a part of the board. So, just coming to an event like this once can lead you to getting totally ensnared by our program. And so please go to the sale. And I also want to thank all of you again for coming tonight and for really taking some time to brave the cold and kind of commune with us here and get to hear the really powerful, the powerful presentation that Joseph presented. Really thank you for that. And anyhow, if you want to contact us, all the contact information is here. Everyone is, very helpful. And if you have people that that you think would like to get clued into doing some of the work that you saw in the presentations, please do some networking and some propaganda for us, because really what this is, this organization, a lot of people, they're not, in our era, people aren't familiar with thinking about government as an extension of their own action. Oftentimes, government has seemed to be this thing that just operates off over there and it does its thing, and I just vote for people, and then they go do this work, and then I get to grouse about it, or maybe I get some benefits here and there if I see them directly. But it all seems to happen at this remote move. But at a local scale, like the scale we work at, that's really not the case. And actually, most of the conservation work, as Michael said, is happening by people who are taking the time to themselves get involved in the work. And we're just an elaboration of it. We're an augmentation of it. The district does amplification of effort, and it really is a powerful thing to take up in this effort. And so I think in a lot of ways, there are a lot of folks out there who think that the conservation work is just being taken care of by somebody. And it's this, maybe they know about the district and think, we're doing it. But actually, we need a lot more people in this community to be doing the work. And, we're set up to be able to channel those efforts to places where resources can come, expertise, community, people that know, how to go about it, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's so much benefit to it. So I really want you to do all you can to not keep it under your hat, if you would. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.